We are back here. This is the Now Morning Show. And yesterday we told you we'll be talking about the decriminalization versus legalization of marijuana. What's the difference? In studio with us, no stranger, Esther, manager of the National Drug Council, Ministry of National Security. Good morning. Welcome back.
Good morning, and thank you.
And thank you for coming to share with us. The first question, what's the difference between decriminalization and legalization?
So decriminalization means that there is no longer a criminal penalty for specific offenses.
Okay.
Whereas legalization opens everything up.
Right.
So there's nothing.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
So, and these specific offenses would have been listed.
Yes.
So, for example, personal possession of about 30 grams, we were told. Yes?
So let us be very, very
Clarify
clear
that for us,
to the listening public. This is not yet law.
Right.
Because I'm seeing it being posted everywhere and it is coming across as if it is a done deal. It is not. The Attorney General has put legislation to the Parliament and it still has to be debated and passed before it becomes law.
Okay.
What is being proposed is that there is no penalty for possession of 30 grams or less.
Okay.
That is what is being
But Carrie
proposed.
and I, they were trying to determine how much weed that is because we have no
Plenty.
idea. You know.
Okay, so think about a pack. I spoke with the Forensic Science Center. You know, they are my go-to people for everything in terms of getting it right.
Yeah.
So I spoke to the forensic science people and they said 30 grams is actually 30 cigarettes. So if you picture a pack of cigarettes, which is 20, and add a half pack to that, that's 30 grams.
Okay, that's if you have the regular size, because you know they have those with the big size you see in the photographs.
Regular
size.
Regular.
All right, so that clears that up.
Right.
Now, the other issue was the male plants versus the female plant, and you're able to grow, well, the legislation is proposing that persons will be able to grow four
male plants.
4 male plants. What does that mean?
Okay. So you have to apply to have a license to grow these 4 male plants.
Right.
You can't just go out and get some seeds and grow
But what are
them.
you growing it for?
You're growing it for your use, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's for your personal use. And people are saying, well, why male plants as opposed to female plants?
Right.
Because the female plants are the flowering plants. And that is where the higher levels of the THC, which is the psychoactive ingredient in the cannabis plant, resides. And so we felt collectively that the male plant was a safer option for those persons who will be growing it and using in that kind of environment.
There's a little bit of a debate that, you know, especially for those who are using it for medicinal purposes, that the amount you would get of the beneficial compounds in the plant, in the male plant, is nowhere near the level seen in the female plant. So no, we're not talking about the THC level, we're talking about things like the CBD and such. What are the facts behind that?
Okay, so let us understand something. If you're using it for medicinal purposes, you're not going to be using it the way you grow it in your backyard.
Right.
Okay, you're going to
I
be
don't grow
growing
it in my backyard.
Well, and the person who will be growing the 4 plants, they're not going to be using it in that way.
Yeah.
If you're using it for medicinal purposes, you will more than likely have a prescription. And the prescription will allow you to get the required doses of that medication properly processed, properly available to you from a dispensary. Okay? So that debate is, to my mind, as a policymaker, something of a smokescreen to justify why persons want to have the female plant as opposed to the male plant. Okay. And let's be very, very clear. The World Health Organization, I heard a statement being proffered yesterday that the World Health Organization has declared that there are medicinal benefits to marijuana, and why are we still trying to control it in the way that we are. What the World Health Organization has said is that there are medical beneficial properties to the cannabinoids. They have put the THC, which is the psychoactive substance, on hold for further testing to determine whether there are medicinal benefits to the THC.
This is in the female plants?
No, THC period.
THC
period. Yeah. But the cannabinoids, there are medicinal benefits to the cannabinoids, and it depends on how they're being utilized and what they're being utilized to treat. But that is very clear. So do not be misled by those who would have us believe, because they have a mic or because they have a position, that it is the same thing. It is not. Okay?
Well, some are asking the question, if there are medicinal benefits, and I know you just went to lengths to explain, in the female plant, which you can grow yourself, why do you have to get a prescription to go into a pharmacy for the processed version?
There are, okay, so with everything, so let's just bring it down to a simple thing. You have fever grass that our parents and grandparents used to give us when we were ill, okay? So you boil the fever grass and you give it, right, okay. So we know that that is one level of intervention if you have a sick, or Zebapeak. Somebody mentioned Zebapeak to me yesterday, actually. But if you have something that requires a higher level of treatment, where do you go? You go to the doctor. They give you a prescription. It's the same basic principle, okay? So there are some things that you can use for, let's say, nausea associated with chemotherapy, but you may need something stronger for treating other issues. And that is where the management of the medicinal component of it comes into play.
Well, one of the debates with regard to herbal medicine is actually when you do it yourself, you're not really sure how much of the components that you have in it. And it could be too much, it could be too little. So that could be one of the debates there. Okay, so we're going to stick a pin in it now to the top of the hour and come back and continue with this very interesting conversation. Crime or no crime? Marijuana. Let's take a break for the news to the top of the hour with Ria and come right back.
Discussion on the decriminalization of marijuana in Trinidad and Tobago and the Cannabis Act, which we've been chatting about just before the break.
As a matter of fact, we have Esther Best still in studio with us, manager of the National Drug Council, Ministry of National Security. And, you know, we started the conversation before the news. We're going to continue the conversation now because we were talking about, you know, the fact that with decriminalization, it means that certain things would now be legal. Is that the correct way to say it? No.
It means that certain things will no longer attract a criminal penalty. So that...
But it's still not legal.
Exactly.
Right.
So that you can now have in your possession up to 30 grams of marijuana, and the police will not bother with you once that legislation is passed, not right now.
Yes.
Okay? If you have between 30 to 60 grams, it becomes a ticketed offense.
Okay.
All right? So, no, if you have between 30 to 60 grams, yes, they can give you a ticket. If you have over 60 grams, then you go to court.
Because what? The assumption is that you're trading in it, you're selling it?
I told you how much 30 grams was, right? 60 grams
cigarettes,
30, right. So 60 grams will be 60 cigarettes. Right. If you have more than that.
Yes. Well, maybe
it begins to beg the question.
But maybe a user, you know, some people probably using, I don't know.
90 cigarettes, 100 cigarettes.
I have no idea. But my question is, where are you meant to get the 30 cigarettes then? Is it that certain people would be authorized to sell these cigarettes?
And that is something that is being worked out. I think that there is, with the coming of the Cannabis Control Bill, and this is why the Attorney General has brought both bills together, the amendment to the Dangerous Drugs Act, as well as the Cannabis Control Bill, which provides for a cannabis licensing authority that would look into all of those matters.
Okay.
And this is why it is important that the public understand that it is not yet in force.
Right.
So if you are in possession, you still run the risk of being caught and being afoul of the law because it is not yet passed.
Now, the AG also spoke about expunging persons' records. What does that mean?
It means that once the bill is passed, if you were in possession of under 30 grams, your record could be expunged. If you're in possession of over that amount, you then have to apply to the Commissioner of Police for your record to be expunged. And if you're in possession of more than the 60, you can then ask your attorney, or you can secure an attorney to request that the record be expunged. So it goes hand in hand with what would be ultimately the amount that you can legally have in your possession and going up as detailed in the bill, in the new bill.
Do you think we'll ever reach legalization of marijuana? Like Canada, for example.
I think for us to reach there are a number of things that still need to be put in place. So we need to manage our healthcare and the provision of interventions a whole lot better. We need to be able to manage what is available and how it is available, how that is managed in terms of the licensing, and to make sure that persons who have prescriptions are getting what they are supposed to get and that persons are dispensing appropriately. There are a number of systems that we have to put in place to be able to efficiently manage both what is being proposed now, which is the decriminalization, and if we are to go forward to legalization.
Do you think, as some people are suggesting, we'll see an increase in the use of marijuana by persons who probably thought, okay, it was illegal, so I'm not going to try it, but now it's decriminalized, so I'm going to try it?
That is usually an automatic, kind of an automatic response. Everywhere that has gone to decriminalization or legalization has seen a spike in use, and then over time a leveling off. My concern is that already we have a cultural acceptance of marijuana use, even rolling down into our youth. And so the decrim discussion makes the perception of harm, reduces the perception of harm, and whenever the perception of harm is reduced, use will go up. And so we do have to be specific in terms of our information that we're giving. This is not something that does not have an adverse impact, especially on young people. And so we need to balance what we're doing legally with education so people understand what marijuana carries.
And so there's you mentioned adverse impact, and one of the effects of especially THC in marijuana is that it distorts your perception of things. What is there in place that addresses the issue of people driving vehicles and such under the influence of marijuana?
Now, Esther, before you answer that, both you and Carrie have been using the jargon interchangeably, THC. Explain that, what THC means in answering that question.
Oh gosh.
Tetrahydrocannabinol.
Right, thank you.
Thank
because
you,
it had just flew. I said it and it was here, and then as Lisa asked the question, it just flew out of my head, but thank you.
You're welcome.
That is the psychoactive ingredient in the cannabis plant.
Excellent.
It is the ingredient that will give you that high.
Right.
Okay? Whereas the cannabinoids are more of the medicinal piece of it, right? That can treat medicinally. So the THC is what has the psychoactive properties and what affects the brain. And so the collective wisdom scientifically is that persons under the age of 24 should not use any substance at all, because it has an impact on the developing brain. And THC does that as well.
But does not include alcohol?
That's what I'm saying. Any substance.
What about prescription drugs as well?
Prescription
OTCs
drugs,
especially.
Right.
Well, not prescription, but OTCs, over-the-counter drugs.
I know.
Yeah.
And this is where the danger comes in with some of these over-the-counter drugs that the young people are mixing to make a drug that gives them a high.
Right.
So I know you've heard of lean, which is a mixture of the cough syrup. Okay, which is a mixture of the cough syrup with Sprite, and they put a Jolly Rancher and stuff into it,
I didn't know
which gives a high. Because and I think Michelle Nasir, when she was here, explained that the codeine gives the same kind of high as heroin.
Right.
So that we hope over time to have the Ministry of Health respond by making those substances a little bit more difficult to access. So it's not over the counter, but you have to go to the counter to be able to purchase it. That's one of the things that we would be pushing for. So yes, some of the over-the-counter drugs do have that impact, but remember that these are all drugs that you have a box that gives you all of the ingredients on it.
And the side effects.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which is the difference with using a substance.
With regard to the use of marijuana and as a gateway drug, some people say it's a gateway drug.
Let's stop right there.
Yes.
Okay. That used to be the thinking.
Right.
Over time, I would say over the last 5 to 10 years, the research has not shown that marijuana is a gateway drug.
Okay.
There are persons who use marijuana and that's all they will ever use.
Right.
Okay. Gateway drugs usually have to do with persons' desire to quell whatever it is that is tormenting their spirit. So that I could start off with 1 drink a night, but because of my emotional state, I can then escalate into drinking more and more and more.
Okay.
And then I can say, you know what, this is not doing it for me anymore. I need something stronger. So let us understand that substance use and substance misuse is usually about what ails the human spirit. What are the demons that people are fighting that they need to quell? That maybe alcohol isn't doing it anymore. I need something stronger. Maybe marijuana isn't doing it anymore. I need something stronger. Maybe cocaine isn't doing it anymore. I now need to use it every day.
Well, that supports the argument of my question, where persons were saying that it's not a gateway drug. What happens is that sometimes you have contaminated product, products that's mixed with something else, and that is what causes the problem more than the use of the pure product itself. How do you respond to that?
It's kind of, there are a lot of myths and some things out there. Yes, there are marijuana cigarettes that may be tainted.
Yeah.
But for the most part, people who use marijuana just use marijuana.
Okay.
A lot of people just use, they just like that high.
Well, they're going to be very happy with once this bill is passed.
Once this bill is passed, let us continue to reinforce that, please.
Just one thing, we never got the answer on the operation of vehicles and such when under the influence of marijuana.
That is contained in the bill. That it's similar to alcohol. If you are operating a vehicle and you're under the influence, it does make you liable.
How are they going to test for that, though?
And that's the thing. There are new testing, new opportunities for testing outside of the breathalyzer, which just tests for alcohol. There are new instruments that are being developed that will test for the presence of alcohol. Marijuana, sorry.
All right.
All right. So Esther Best, Manager, National Drugs Council, Ministry of National Security. We can talk about this topic for the entire show.
Entire week.
But we're going to leave it there. Have you back again, as usual, on the program to sort of bring light to these subjects here for us and the national population. All right. So, Carrie, we are